Let us explore odd facts about meditation and insomnia. This morning's lesson is drawn from a good-hearted question found on Reddit. The question begins, can meditation help make up for lost sleeping hours due to insomnia? The question continues, I just wanted to know, what anyone's thoughts and personal experiences are, and if there are some studies regarding this. Usually when I search about meditation and insomnia, the questions are often, can meditation cure or worsen insomnia? But in this case, has meditation at least help you, even for a bit, to energize during times where you have very few hours of sleep and have upcoming work to do? There are random days or nights wherein I would sleep, then wake up after like 4 to 5 hours of sleeping. And afterwards I cannot sleep anymore. And it sucks to have a damned 9-hour job, 5 days a week, with extremely demanding bosses. So I'm looking forward to meditation because in my personal experience, when I was very active in martial arts, I would do lots of workouts before we would spar. In order to prepare and calm me further, and to hopefully restore some energy, I would meditate for 5 to 6 minutes, and miraculously, I felt so energized. Although I'm not sure if it's all just the placebo effect, but I don't think it's all placebo. Although I'm not sure on how much meditation can help, I still believe it's better than nothing. So let's explore this. Let's see, here we go. That'll work. Can meditation act as a substitute for sleep? No. Not a substitute. There has been a recent discovery called of the glymphatic system, which rhymes with lymphatic system, and it's very much like that, but it's exclusively for the brain. And it takes place during deep, prolonged sleep. Therefore, if our sleep is disturbed, or our sleep is short, or both, the glymphatic system doesn't get a chance to do its job. If we want to avoid cognitive decline, if we want to age fabulously, we must live in harmony with the systems of our body. We must make the changes we need to make in our life to help us get the sleep we need. If insomnia is a chronic, lifelong problem, seek out a professional, not someone who maybe listened to one lecture of insomnia during their entire medical education, but someone for whom that's their niche. If you don't have someone like that, use this free database. It will help you. These doctors specialize in, these are MDs, board certified, but they've spent a lot of their continuing education focusing on lifestyle therapies, which are cheaper and quicker and more sustainable than just loading up on drugs, typically. Now, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a neurologist, I'm just a meditation teacher. But I've spoken to enough psychologists and PhDs, PsyDs, psychiatrists, neurologists, and the like to share some advice with you. And it's very, very thumbnail sketch advice. If you find yourself waking up around 3 in the morning regularly, or 4 in the morning, that can be related to cortisol. And anywhere from 2 to 4, if you find yourself waking up fully awake then regularly, that can be a symptom of trauma. Whether point-in-time trauma or whether long-term trauma, it affects our adrenal and cortical cortisol systems in our body. It affects our fight and flight, and that's a survival mechanism, but it's not a sustainable one. So it could behoove you to look for, in addition to physiological causes, also psychological causes. That's not really a right term. I would say if you find a psychologist who specializes in PTSD, if you find someone who specializes in trauma, and at least have a conversation with them, they may be able to help you, especially if they offer you or point in the direction of physiological therapies for it. For I assure you, although there are psychological symptoms of trauma, it is not a psychological disorder. It's a physiological disorder with psychological symptoms. So this is a good place to start. Another good place to start, and I'll reach for that link right now. Give me a moment. And by the way, this is not a live link on the screen. There is a live link in the description area below the videos under the heading Freebies, because that's how I roll. So one moment, got to find the right button. Okay, let's go over here. Let's go back over here. Okay. This link could also be helpful. This link is also found in the description area below the video. These are therapists who specialize in neurodivergence. Now, does everyone who have insomnia have neurodivergence? No. But the majority of people with neurodivergence do have endured some form of trauma. Trauma did not cause their neurodivergence, but neurodivergents living in a neurotypical world are often subjected to trauma, and not always maliciously, just sometimes ignorantly. Ignorant people can do great harm. So there's a question there, and I guess I'll answer it right now. So let's explore this. Actually, I'm going to come back to your question in a minute. I'm going to stick with the question I'm originally answering or exploring, which is meditation a good substitute for sleep? So the basic thing is, if our sleep is interrupted, it could be a red flag for trauma. Some of the best therapists who specialize in neurodivergence have a lot of experience in trauma, because trauma is ubiquitous in the neurodivergent community. So these are two resources that may be helpful to you. Now, in the interim, can meditation help deal with the symptoms of sleep deprivation? It depends, and we'll get to, for not all forms of meditation are created equal. So we'll explore that in a minute. Usually okay, here we go. Okay, so I already read that, so let's get back to here. So not all forms of meditation are created equal. So let's explore that in greater detail. Sturgeon's law reminds us that 90% of everything sucks. Well, how does that manifest? Well, it manifests that when 90% of meditation teachers are convinced that being rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel is great, you're going to get some wonky advice. Yes, there's a minority who believe being flexible, loving, rational, laid back, egalitarian, lucid, cooperative, kind of where it's at, but they are in the minority. Therefore, it should not surprise us when the majority of meditation teachers implore their students to actively focus or actively analyze or both. They might use fancy names. They might use Sanskrit names. They might use Pali names. They might use words like samatha, vipassana. But the problem with this is the only way to perform those activities or to rely upon the discrete structures found within the medial prefrontal cortex or the dorsal lateral prefrontal cortex. Overuse the prefrontal cortex will stimulate our amygdala, this thing here that kind of looks like a P. This is the seat of aggression and anxiety. So, if you are sleep deprived and you get a jolt of cortisol and a jolt of adrenaline, you could think, oh my goodness, I'm so energized, I don't need to sleep. But that's entirely unsustainable. And will drag us further down the rabbit hole of neurosis and unhappiness. It will drag us away from peace. It'll drag us away from love. It'll drag us away from joy. It'll drag us away from wisdom. Not cleverness. It could feed cleverness, but it won't feed wisdom. Excuse me. But there's some good news, because these are not the only parts of their central nervous system, and there are regions of the central nervous system that are optimized for mindfulness and meditation. Let's look at those right now. The most efficient way to practice mindfulness is to silently, mentally, and passively recite the demonstrative pronoun this during our inhalation. Doing so induces the cerebral cortex to cooperate with the sympathetic nervous system found in the middle third of our spinal cord. This bad boy has evolved to help us perceive in a very special way, to help us perceive vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly, which is the opposite. So this is very yin as opposed to being very yang, and that's a good thing. So this sympathetic nervous system has evolved to help us perceive sight, sound, sensations, flavors, scents, and the like, including emotions, intentions, thoughts, memories, and imaginings. The most efficient way to practice meditation is to silently, mentally, and passively recite the one-syllable verb ease during the exhalation. Doing so, again, induces our cerebral cortex, this time, to cooperate with our parasympathetic nervous system. This parasympathetic nervous system, located in both the lower third as well as the upper third of our spinal cord, has evolved to support both physical relaxation as well as mental release. There are some distinct fringe benefits to practicing an autonomic-oriented mindfulness and meditation. First, it quells the anxiety and aggression of our amygdala. Second, it stimulates the empathy and love and compassion of our anterior cingulate gyrus. Third, it helps our choices, utterances, and deeds to flow with the effortless effort of love's centered spontaneity. So if that sounds like a good idea to you, if you want more peace, more love, you want to effectively and beneficially go with the flow, this is the course of action that I recommend. And now I can turn my attention to the good-hearted person who wrote me some questions in the comment area. So I'm going to do that after approximately, I'm going to do that after approximately 30 seconds of housekeeping. This is Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. For more than 30 years, I spent about 8 hours a day, almost every day, studying, practicing, mastering, and reverse engineering the teachings and techniques of the School of Meditation so that you would not have to. Welcome, my friends, to Meditate Like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the generosity of viewers just like you. So I'm going to go back to my opening notes. Actually, I'm going to hit button 8 and investigate some questions that were left with me right now. So let's see. So Ruby Bubble wrote, I have a lot of trauma from abandonment as a child. I only realized these things can be healed after doing lots of magic mushrooms, now trying to use more natural techniques. So I'm really sorry that you were traumatized and that you were abandoned, and that's appalling. My late mother used to say, just because you can have children doesn't mean everybody should have children. And there are lots of bad parents out there. One moment. I'm terribly excited that there's lots of research about the clinical applications of magic mushrooms for therapy. I'm really excited to see what becomes of that. And this meditation technique we just explored can be applied to brisk walking meditation, which is ideal for dealing with trauma. So let's pretend you're going to go for a brisk walk around your block, because let's face it, if traumatic events come up, you don't want to have that happen when you're crossing the street. So yeah, I find it safest to do walking meditation around the block. If you live in a bad part of a dangerous neck of the woods and you don't feel safe going for a walk when it's dark out, then I would recommend using a treadmill, but without watching the TV. So when you're going for a brisk walk and you're swinging your arms and you're letting your eyes just notice what's going on, because that's how you keep from stepping in dog do, that's actually therapeutically ideal. And it can act as a tool to sort of massage our hippocampus, which acts sort of like a doorman standing behind a velvet rope with a clipboard that won't let the accountant into the disco because he doesn't like the way he's dressed. Something can happen 15 years ago, but if the brain does not recognize it as a long-term memory, it will recognize it as a present moment event. And that's why trauma can be so tricky. You can't think your way out of it. You can't self-talk your way out of it. You can't believe your way out of it. You cannot visualize your way out of it. It's a neurological circumstance with psychological symptoms, not the other way around. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. But fortunately, so Dr. Tom Hartman, PhD, wrote a book called Walking Your Blues Away, and it does a lovely job of exploring brisk walking meditation through the lens of neuroscience. And it basically says what I just told you. So the only difference is when doing brisk walking meditation, and as a fellow survivor of trauma, I have to do this especially every year at Christmas. That's a very triggering time for me. So when I'm doing walking meditation I substitute the word this with the word perceiving. I replace the word ease with the word releasing. So these mean the same thing, or these are related to each other, but they're trisyllabic words that are more physiological, sustainable. Because when you're walking briskly, see, when you're sitting, it's easy to do one-syllable words. When you're walking briskly, it just works better with three-syllable words. This is not going to erase your past. This is going to help you make peace with your past. Making peace with your past doesn't mean you feel great about what happened. It means you're able to observe what happened and the pain it caused you and the injustices without going into a psychotic break, without losing your shit and, getting violent or turning to self-harm or anything like that. So what happens is we are going for our walking meditation, stuff is going to come up. Perceptions, emotions, intentions, thoughts, memories, imaginings, all sorts of stuff. The seventh enlightenment factor is equanimity. What that means is that we have the same reaction to everything, whether that which we perceive as external or internal or physical or mental or painful or pleasurable or boring or interesting or glorious or grotesque. And their same response is perceiving, releasing, perceiving, releasing, in harmony with our inhalations and our exhalations, in harmony with our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems, in harmony with our brisk walking. And that helps the brain to process that. There's a huge physiological difference between our body responding to a long-term memory and our body responding to a trauma that's experiencing as a present event. I hope that makes sense to you. So this is not a substitute to working with a qualified psychologist for whom PTSD is their bread and butter. But it is a wonderful adjunct, especially if you have difficulty finding one. And allow me to say this real quick. Just because we have trauma does not mean we're neurodivergent. I have to make that clear. But it's a possibility. Statistically, the people who are most burdened with trauma are the square pegs being forced to fit into square holes. I'm sorry, let's try that again. The square pegs being forced to fit into round holes. And this causes a lot of trauma. So just as the majority of homeless are neurodivergent, the majority of people incarcerated are neurodivergent, it is in reverse. You can't say just because you're incarcerated or just because you're homeless or just because you're traumatized, it's 100% guaranteed that you are. But a harmless thing to do is dedicate 10 to 15 minutes an evening to surfing TikTok, looking up the terms ADHD or autism or AU or ADHD or neurodivergent, and just see where it leads you. If you recognize patterns, then working with a therapist who specializes in neurodivergence to evaluate you could really help heal your trauma tremendously. But it's not the only something in town. I forgot the phrase. So, having done that, I think it could be great fun if together as a team we played with the latest iteration of love, mindfulness, meditation, and the 3 marks of reality. Now, I have ADHD, which means I have all the neurodivergence and all the comorbidities. So I'm as fun as a barrel of monkeys. So I have, over the decades, hacked mindfulness and meditation so that it's doable for people who are oddly wired, such as myself. Perhaps you will find this helpful. Perhaps not. So I found mindfulness and meditation can be a dopamine-intense activity, which can be challenging for those of us with ADHD. Therefore, I've peppered practices that are designed to give us a splash of dopamine here and there. Please chant with me. In our compassion may we long to free all beings' choices, utterances, and deeds from being dominated by the survival impulses of pushing, pulling, and clinging, metaphorically known as the three mental poisons. So that is a way of training. Just chanting that alone helps us train in the second fold of the Buddha's Eightfold Path. Enlightenment is nothing more than the mastery of the Buddha's Eightfold Path. Getting so good at practicing the Eightfold Path that we do so spontaneously, habitually, easily, and effectively. Let's continue. In our pragmatism, may our liberation of all others be fueled by our reliance on the Buddha's example, instructions, and students described by the metaphor of the three wish-fulfilling jewels. And now, because I am a truly lazy bastard, I'm going to take these 2 pages of words and squish them down to 8 syllables. Now, once again, here comes the dopamine. Here's an optional ADHD's splash of dopamine, which is basically just reciting these 8 syllables while performing a performing a geriatric squat thrust. I do not do this superstitiously. I'm not looking for magic, but most people with ADHD or ADHD have learned that some forms of exercise will give us a hit of dopamine, which can be useful. And to blend that with verbiage that helps us to train the neural pathways of empathy, to me, that's just fun. So what follows next is completely optional. I'm going to swing the camera out and perform geriatric squat thrusts. Whoa, boy. May we free all through the 3 jewels. 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 Woof! Oh boy. That's a very poignant observation. So let's see here. I want to try an experiment. I want to see if I highlight this, if it shows up. It doesn't. Bummer. What happens? Oh well, what happens if I go like this? Does that show up? Well, we'll find out in 20 seconds. Still learning my way around OBS. That's the software I use to live stream. Okay, here we go. So let us bring the Dhamma circumstantial into the path of metta love, sati mindfulness, samadhi meditation, and the tilakkhana 3 marks of existence. In other words, this morning the circumstantial is going to be our common denominator. So let us begin by bringing the Dhamma circumstantial into the path of dukkha, stress, which is the first of 3 marks of reality. Each of us has experienced the stress of not getting our circumstantial needs met, how we want when we want for as long as we want, if at all. So we're going to take all these words and squish them down to 2 syllables that we're going to divide between our inhalation and our exhalation. And we're using lots as a monosyllabic synonym of circumstance. Now we're going to continue with the circumstantial, but bring it into the path of metta, loving kindness. Since we are not alone in our frustrations, we could also long that other circumstantial needs also be met. Good fortune. A one-syllable synonym of good fortune is boon, like Daniel Boone. And now we continue with the Dhamma circumstantial, this time bringing it into Anika's path of impermanence, which is the 2nd mark of reality. Observing the coming and going of circumstantial phenomena, help us to see that ever-changing one and all there is nothing permanent to grasp. And now we conclude the Dhamma circumstantial by bringing into the path, the scary path of anatta, no self, which is the 3rd mark of reality. So let's demystify no self. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever circumstantial phenomena we notice during our previous inhalation could feel less like our identity, as if it simply did not define us, as if it was as non-graspable as a vast empty void, like the illusion of the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless morn, which, although tantalizing to the eye, could feel not graspable to the hand. Oops, wrong button. Having gently contemplated, let us now meditate. If you've just tuned in, allow me to refresh your memory. The most efficient way to practice mindfulness is to silently and mentally recite the demonstrative pronoun this during our inhalation, which induces our cerebral cortex to cooperate with our sympathetic nervous system, which is wired to perceive vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly. Perceive what? Perceive the sight, sound, sensations, flavors, scents, and the like, in addition to emotions, intentions, thoughts, memories, and imaginings. The most efficient way to practice meditation is to silently and mentally recite the 1-syllable verb ease during each exhalation, thus facilitating enhanced cooperation between our cerebral cortex and our parasympathetic nervous system, which has evolved to support both physical relaxation as well as mental release. So let's practice this right now for approximately 12 sets of 12 repetitions. So during each inhalation, when we're silently and mentally reciting the demonstrative syllable pronoun this, we can advance the tip of our right thumb, beginning with our right little finger. Please practice with me. This behavior is not only useful for our subtle energy, but it is a form of stimming, which can be beneficial for those who have either autism or ADHD. That's one set of 12 rounds or repetitions. How do we count 12 sets? On our left hand. On our left hand, we begin with our index finger and we count sets. First set of 12 repetitions. Second set of 12 repetitions. Third set of 12 repetitions. Fourth set, and so on. Is this awkward? Of course, everything you learn is awkward the first few times you do it. Persist with this technique every 12 hours for 14 days, and then render judgment and decide whether it benefits you or not. Now let us bring the Chitta mental into the path, but we'll do so silently now that we've already explored the ideas behind this. And now let's meditate. Let's practice mindfulness and meditation. Okay, before we start our next set of brief contemplations, I recommend that everybody take 5. And I'm back. Thank you for your patience. So now let us bring the Vedana interpersonal into the path of stress. And now let us perform the 4 passive contemplations of the Kaya physical. Let us seal our practice by chanting loving wishes for universal enlightenment and well-being. May all circumstances of all beings appearing yet impermanent be as safe and abundant as a real or imagined Buddha's land. May all minds of all beings clear yet impermanent be as joyfully enlightened as a real or imagined Buddha's mind. May all relationships of all beings resounding yet impermanent be as peacefully loving as a real or imagined Buddha's speech. May all bodies of all beings sensual yet impermanent be as beautifully healthy as a real or imagined Buddha's form. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel. In approximately 8.5 hours, I would very much like to return to lead tonight's evening meditation class and group practice. And if you are as geeky as me, may the Force be with you always.